I'm Tickle from the show Moonshiners, and we're here in Spring Lake Park, Minnesota.
If you smell moonshine and you can't smell and you can't determine what it's made from, then you don't want to drink it.
No. When I seen this spring head, it's almost like stepping back in time to me.
It's amazing, man. You could almost crawl up in that, couldn't you?
There's not a lot of places like this left on the face of this earth.
When a man who once turned
shocking news broke that sent ripples through the Moonshiners fan base and the Appalachian community alike. Steven Ray Tickle, the wild-hearted rebel who turned backwoods moonshine into television gold, is once again making headlines. But this time, it's not about a new business venture, a redemption arc, or a triumphant comeback. This time, the news carries a much darker weight. For years, Tickle lived as the lovable outlaw, the man who laughed in the face of authority and somehow walked away unscathed. Viewers saw him as the free spirit of Appalachia, the moonshiner who danced on the edge of the law with a grin that disarmed even his harshest critics. He wasn't just breaking the rules, he was redefining them, turning a hidden, illegal trade into mainstream entertainment. Steven Ray Tickle built a life few could imagine. Fame followed, money followed, opportunity followed. Eventually, it even appeared that stability had finally found him. But behind the scenes, the past never truly let go. Today, we're uncovering how one courtroom decision erased everything he rebuilt, how a single moment reopened old wounds, activated forgotten consequences, and shattered what many believed was his second chance at life. This is the story of Steven Ray Tickle's irreversible mistake. For a long time, it seemed like Tickle had beaten the odds. Moonshiners didn't just make him famous, it gave him legitimacy. What once forced him to live in secrecy now earned him admiration. Fans saw a man who came from nothing, someone rooted deeply in Appalachian tradition, carrying forward a craft passed down through generations. As the show gained popularity, Tickle evolved in the public eye. He wasn't just a moonshiner anymore. He became a businessman, a brand, a personality. He invested in legal ventures, opened restaurants, and began shaping a future that looked far removed from the shadowy woods where his story began. Then came marriage. His wife was widely seen as a stabilizing force, someone who grounded him, someone who offered structure to a life long defined by chaos. Together, they represented the idea that even the most rebellious souls could change. To fans, it felt like redemption was complete. But redemption, when built on fragile legal ground, can collapse without warning. Unlike many downfalls before it, Steven Ray Tickle's didn't begin with drama. There was no explosive raid, no helicopter spotlight cutting through the trees, no dramatic discovery of illegal stills hidden beneath tarps and leaves. Instead, it started with something painfully ordinary, a car accident. At first glance, the incident seemed like something that could happen to anyone. Accidents occur every day. Most are handled quietly, with paperwork, insurance claims, and a few uncomfortable phone calls. But for Tickle, this accident carried consequences far beyond bent metal and shaken nerves. Because what mattered most wasn't the crash. It was what the crash revealed. When authorities reviewed the circumstances surrounding the accident, one detail immediately stood out. Steven Ray Tickle was reportedly driving on a suspended license. To the average person, this might seem like a manageable offense. In many cases, it results in fines, probation, or additional license restrictions. It's serious, but rarely life-altering. For Tickle, however, it was catastrophic. Years earlier, he had entered into a strict legal agreement with the Commonwealth of Virginia, an agreement that offered mercy, but only under unforgiving conditions. Following a felony conviction, the court suspended a lengthy prison sentence, allowing him to remain free on one crucial promise. Any violation, no matter how small, would send him straight back to prison. No warnings, no exceptions, no excuses. So when the suspended license surfaced, it wasn't treated as a minor infraction. It was interpreted as proof that Tickle had once again crossed a line he knew he couldn't afford to cross. In that instant, the illusion of redemption shattered. To understand why this single mistake carried such devastating weight, you have to go back to 2016. That year marked one of the most serious legal turning points in Tickle's life. A felony conviction resulted in a 3-year penitentiary sentence, but the court showed leniency. Instead of immediate incarceration, the sentence was suspended under a deferred agreement. It was a lifeline, but it was also a trap. The terms were absolute. Any legal trouble whatsoever would automatically activate the sentence. It didn't matter whether the violation involved violence, theft, or something as mundane as driving illegally. In the eyes of the law, rules were rules, and Steven Ray Tickle broke one. When the court reviewed the latest incident, the decision was swift and unforgiving. What might have been dismissed as a traffic-related mistake for anyone else was reclassified as a massive breach of trust. The judge saw it not as a one-time lapse in judgment, but as confirmation of a pattern, a man who, despite fame and opportunity, could not fully leave his outlaw instincts behind. The deferred sentence was activated. Tickle was ordered to serve approximately a year and a half behind bars. But the punishment went deeper than that. The sentence wasn't just about the accident or the suspended license. It was also about something discovered years earlier, a 12-gauge sawed-off shotgun found in Tickle's truck. That weapon had been the spark that ignited the legal firestorm back in 2016. While the punishment for it had been delayed, it had never been erased. In essence, the court wasn't punishing Tickle for a new crime. It was enforcing an old one. Justice, delayed, but not denied. For most of his life, Steven Ray Tickle survived through charisma. He talked his way out of trouble. He leaned into his personality. He convinced people, judges included, that he was changing, growing, learning. And for a while, it worked. But the law doesn't forget. Eventually, charm runs out, second chances expire, and consequences come due. When they did, they came all at once. To truly understand why this moment hit so hard, you have to understand who Steven Ray Tickle really is. Calling him a reality TV star doesn't come close to capturing the full picture. He represents something deeper, something rooted in Appalachian history and identity. Tickle is a modern folk figure, caught between tradition and transformation, between a way of life passed down through generations and a society that increasingly demands conformity. He wasn't just living illegally, he was living culturally. Steven Ray Tickle was born on November 30th, 1976, in Danville, Virginia. As of 2025, he is 48 years old. In that region, moonshining wasn't merely a crime, it was a legacy. Families passed down knowledge, quietly, carefully, and proudly. It was survival. It was resistance. It was identity. From a young age, Tickle absorbed everything around him. He learned by watching his elders, experimenting on his own, and obsessively perfecting his craft. This wasn't rebellion for rebellion's sake. It was who he was. Tickle didn't inherit success. He built it. Using crude materials and whatever tools were available, he constructed homemade stills that reflected both ingenuity and defiance. Turkey fryers became heat sources. Mason jars replaced professional equipment. Improvisation wasn't optional, it was necessary. Even early on, his methods showed something important. He wasn't afraid to bend rules, improvise solutions, and push limits. That mindset shaped his entire life. Tickle once famously said, "It gets in your blood. I'll moonshine till the day that I die." That wasn't a soundbite. It was a confession. Moonshining wasn't something he did. It was something he was. And that identity, deeply ingrained, would later clash violently with the expectations of the modern world. What truly separated Steven Ray Tickle from a simple outlaw stereotype was something few people expected. He had a legitimate career. Outside the woods and hidden stills, Tickle was a highly skilled union carpenter. He worked honest jobs. He followed schedules. He showed discipline and craftsmanship that contradicted his moonshiner image. For a time, he even lived in the Washington, D.C. area, contributing to major commercial construction projects, including well-known establishments near the heart of the city. The contrast was staggering. The same man who built crude moonshine equipment in rural Virginia was also helping construct polished urban landmarks. Two worlds, one man, and a conflict that never truly resolved. Steven Ray Tickle's story was never simple. From the outside, it often looked like he lived recklessly by choice, but those who knew him best understood the deeper conflict. He was a man constantly pulled in opposite directions, one foot planted firmly in Appalachian tradition, the other trying desperately to step into a lawful, modern world. On one side was the wilderness, the woods, the stills, the silence broken only by fire crackling under copper and steel. On the other side was society, schedules, permits, inspections, and rules that felt unnatural to someone raised on self-reliance and secrecy. For Tickle, these two worlds never fully merged. They collided. Long before television fame, Tickle proved he was capable of structure and discipline. As a union carpenter, he built a legitimate career that demanded precision, patience, and responsibility. This wasn't casual labor. It was professional-grade craftsmanship. During his time in the Washington, D.C. area, he worked on major commercial construction projects that required teamwork, compliance, and trust. These weren't backwoods jobs done under the radar. They were high-profile builds, completed under strict codes and oversight. People who worked alongside him described him as skilled, focused, and dependable. In those moments, Steven Ray Tickle looked like a man who had found a lawful path forward. But something always pulled him back. No matter how far Tickle traveled, or how legitimate his work became, the past lingered. Moonshining wasn't just an activity he could quit. It was tied to identity, family, and heritage. In Appalachia, moonshining represented defiance against outside control, a symbol of survival when systems failed local communities. To walk away from that world felt, to Tickle, like walking away from himself. And so, even as his public image softened, the internal struggle intensified. The cameras showed progress. The court documents told a different story. When moonshiners made Tickle a household name, many believed fame itself would protect him. Television had a way of rewriting narratives, turning criminals into characters and mistakes into entertainment. But the justice system doesn't operate on popularity. While fans saw growth, the law saw a man still bound by old agreements, old conditions, and old consequences waiting to be enforced. Every step forward carried invisible weight. When Steven Ray Tickle stood before the judge following the car accident, the room wasn't filled with applause or sympathy. It was filled with paperwork, records, agreements, signatures from years earlier. The judge didn't see a TV personality, didn't see a businessman, didn't see a husband trying to do better. The court saw a defendant who violated the most basic condition of his freedom. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. The deferred sentence from years earlier had been crystal clear. It was designed to offer one final chance, not an ongoing negotiation. Any violation meant activation. No discretion, no leniency. Driving on a suspended license, even without malicious intent, was enough. The ruling wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was mechanical. Steven Ray Tickle's sentence was reactivated, just as the agreement had promised. When the news broke, fans were stunned. Social media filled with disbelief, frustration, and confusion. Many couldn't understand how something so small could undo so much. Others pointed out that the rules had been clear from the beginning. The divide was sharp. Some saw injustice, others saw inevitability. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. Tickle's story was tragic. For Steven Ray Tickle, the sentence didn't just mean prison time. It meant the collapse of everything he had rebuilt. Business opportunities froze. Public appearances vanished. Momentum disappeared overnight. The redemption arc people believed in came to an abrupt halt. The second chance he fought for didn't fade slowly. It ended instantly. At its core, Tickle's downfall wasn't about paperwork or traffic laws. It was about identity. He spent his life trying to balance who he was raised to be with who the world demanded he become. That balancing act worked until it didn't. In the end, the part of him shaped by rebellion and resistance made one small decision that carried massive consequences. Not because the act was extreme, but because the margin for error was gone. Steven Ray Tickle's story now stands as a cautionary tale, especially for those who believe past mistakes can be fully outrun. Second chances exist, but they come with boundaries. And boundaries don't bend forever. The law may wait, but it doesn't forget. As of now, Tickle faces approximately a year and a half behind bars. Time served not for a new violent crime, but for failing to meet the strict conditions of a deal made long ago. His future beyond that remains uncertain. Will he return to public life? Will fame welcome him back? Or will this moment permanently close the chapter on his story? Only time will tell. Steven Ray Tickle will always be remembered as more than a Moonshiners cast member. He symbolizes a vanishing way of life, one that clashes violently with modern systems of law and order. See, he is proof that culture, identity, and legality don't always align, and when they don't, the consequences can be unforgiving. His rise showed what tradition could become. His fall showed what tradition can cost. In a single moment, everything changed. One decision, one stop sign, one violation, one courtroom ruling. Steven Ray Tickle didn't lose everything because he was reckless. He lost it because the past never truly released him, and the rules he agreed to were waiting patiently. This wasn't just the end of a comeback. It was the closing of a chapter written years ago. And for the man who once turned outlaw living into entertainment, the final lesson came quietly, firmly, and without cameras rolling.